Before we get going, I feel we need to apologise for being a little quiet over the last few months. But today, we're back with a bang, celebrating two of the most intoxicating track-focused supercars of the modern era. The Porsche 991 Gen 2 GT3RS and the McLaren 675LT. Both very generously loaned to us by SCD member Lee after he took them both on our Alps tour just a few weeks ago. Both cars have now been replaced by faster and more technically accomplished models, but both are firmly cemented as legends of their time, and one especially is firmly cemented in Lee's garage for good. They represent two very different approaches at the shared goal of going very fast around a circuit and putting the driver right at the heat of it all. One assaults the centres with razor precision and a wailing soundtrack. The other takes a haymaker to your face with pure power, which you're always fighting to tame. Let's start with what's been the default choice in this sector for the last 7 years, the GT3RS.
To be more specific, this is a 991 Gen 2, which means it has 520 horsepower and it revs all the way to 9,000 RPM, just like the GT3. This one doesn't have the YSAC pack, but it does have a Sharkworks exhaust system. So it sounds every bit as loud as that lizard green paintwork is on the outside. Now, you all know a lot about these cars. They've been out for 7 years now, and actually 4 years ago I drove this very car for a magazine article. It's obviously now been replaced by the 992, but it doesn't mean that this car will be forgotten. So I just want to get reunited with it and touch on why the GT3RS is the go-to when it comes to track-focused supercars. Point number one, that engine, which is basically straight out of a cup car. But we bang on about a lot of modern turbocharged cars not giving a load back to the driver at low speeds. That engine, to me, is exactly why this does. But the next reason, the one I'm experiencing now, and the reason why if you go to Donington, Silverstone, Spa, anywhere like that on a track day, the paddock is just full of these, full of GT3s and RSs. And some people are like, oh, it's just boring, everyone's got one, but it's just because they're so good. Gone are the days of Porsche having it all wrong by chucking the engine out the back, because this is so balanced. And gone are the days of that light front end meaning understeer, because the wider front track they gave to the 991, along with some wider sticky tyres, means the front end just sticks. It's so darty. Even though a lot of people moaned about it losing the hydraulic setup of the 997, they did finally nail it with this. Another thing people moaned about, this was the first GT3RS that was PDK only. No manual, but I don't think anyone moans about it anymore because it's sort of the way of the world, but I mean, it's so good. Just 3 downshifts at once. And just lets you play that engine like a musical instrument. It doesn't bang you in the back like a Ferrari gearbox or maybe a Lamborghini single clutch, but it is just bam, bam, razor sharp. In fact, I've got goosebumps at that sound behind me. It is something special. This has the optional carbon ceramic brakes. I don't really need to tell you, do I? They are phenomenal. Porsches are known for their stopping power, and yeah, it kind of tears your face off and they just don't fade. Now performance, that's probably one to talk about. You're lugging around under 1,500 kilos and we're sort of blown out of proportion these days by some of the numbers we see from the latest supercars, but 520 horsepower is still a lot, trust me. It is more than enough and you can enjoy it. It is way more than enough power to feel properly quick, but it means you can use it, and it means it's not lighting up the tyres absolutely everywhere. It's not the warmest day today, and it does move around at the back of it, keep you on your toes, which is great, but you can go flat. It's not terrifying. Now this car didn't have the exhaust last time I drove it, and obviously they still sound mega as standard, but this has really transformed it. Now Lee, who loaned us this car very kindly, owned it back then as well. He's owned it from new and he doesn't intend on it going anywhere. He wants this to be a one-owner, 40,000 mile car that's sort of been all over Europe, and he wants to hand it down to his son, and I can absolutely see why he would not let this go. It's just the one. Hardly anything comes together. He swore then. This is a family channel, but this car, oh my god, hardly anything comes together on a road like this. It's exciting all the time, and it shows why you don't need 800 horsepower. You really don't. I know it sounds boring, but you don't. And with that said, I shall pass you over to John T, who will no doubt imminently tell you why I'm wrong.
Well, it's simple. 520 brake horsepower is a lot, but it's not enough. This has an evil 666 brake horsepower, and thanks to turbocharging an engine of roughly the same capacity, rather than 470 Newton meters of torque that you get in the GT3RS, this has 700. This means that getting from 0 to the national speed limit takes half a second less, and then it'll carry on accelerating all the way up to 203 miles an hour. Now that's slightly less than a standard 675LT, because if I press this button here, unlike the GT3RS, I can have the roof down, the wind in my hair, and get slightly wet in the British summer. Now, although I have a bit of a reputation for not being the biggest of Porsche fans, I must admit, I do really like that one. And I'm actually on the fence as to which car I'd actually take. But for now, I'm happy in this LT, of which there were just 500 spiders made, most of them in orange and grey. But this has this beautiful triple layer green paintwork, which is absolutely delightful to look at. Like the GT3RS, this also has carbon ceramic brakes and McLaren's seamless semi-automatic gearbox, which is every bit as good as the PDK system. You also get these lovely little pops when you change down the box if you have it in track mode. It has a few different driving modes that you can use. Once you've pressed active, that gives you a few little dials to play with where you can vary the stiffness of the chassis and also the power output from normal, sport or up to track, which I've got it in right now. Probably not ideal on a day like today, but it's worth it just for the pops from the exhaust. Like that. It also means that if you don't want to see the car behind you, you can press aero and bye-bye. Your spoiler comes up and you can't see the person that's getting angry behind you. Not that they'll be behind you for long. Now I have still got the chassis in normal mode for these roads because they are a little bit bumpy, but even then it is quite a firm ride. But it's not crashy. McLarens have always had this knack of being firm, but they somehow still iron out the bumps in the road. How they do it, I've got no idea. You get some incredible feedback through the steering, but I must admit, it's not quite as good as what you get in the GT3RS. It just lacks that little bit of rawness. It's not bad, don't get me wrong, it's still brilliant, but I just want that little bit more feeling from it. Now I did wonder why the owner decided to buy both of these cars. They're both from the same era and both lightweight specials, but actually they are so different in their temperament. The GT3RS is a tool that you can just use for having that morning blast, but dare I say it, the McLaren is more usable. I think it is. I know the boot's probably smaller, but if you stick it in the normal driving modes, then you can just relax and enjoy the ride. Because you have less power in that Porsche, you can sort of rag it a little bit more, whereas this, you breathe on the throttle and it's stupidly fast. I dare say it's maybe a little bit too fast to enjoy fully, unless you want to put your license at risk.
So there you have our celebration of two extremely special cars we'd have a very tough time choosing between. Both have all the performance and tech you'd expect of the modern era, but they managed to retain a truly raw character you don't often find these days. And they came before OPF's deadened the exhaust note, which is such an integral part of really enjoying a car like these. When I was assigned the RS, I actually said I was jealous of Jonty in the LT because of the sheer power and the way it moves around and keeps you on your toes. But funnily enough, Jonty replied that he might even sway towards the RS because of the unbelievable wail of that engine. Personally, I find myself swaying to whichever one I've driven the most recently. They're both just that good. If you drove them blindfolded, not that I'd recommend that, the RS would be unmistakably Porsche and the LT would be unmistakably McLaren. Conclusion? You need to be like Lee and have both. Alright, that requires a rather large sum of money, but it makes so much sense having both of these in your garage to suit whatever mood you're in and how brave you're feeling. And for me, regardless of how good the 765LT and 992 GT3RS are, the 675LT and the 991 GT3RS will remain two of the all-time greats.